Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. As you know, following the burning and insulting the Holy Quran, the protests across all Muslim countries broke out and people are protesting to this action. Today, the Mr. Mehdi Taib, the founder of Al-Qaim Seminary based in Qom, is with us. Hello, Mr. Taib, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Well, as you know, unfortunately, the perpetrator of burning the Holy Quran has burned the or holy book for the second time in the protection of the Swedish government. What do you think is the intention of the perpetrator and the Swedish government as a supporter of this act?
Well, as you said, it's not the first time that is happening, and it's the second time in a row in Sweden, and it also happened a few times back in the US and in some other countries, and it's not the first holy book that's being set on fire. There were other holy books, Bible and Torah, in some other parts of the world that were set on fire. I think we need to dissect this issue. We need to look at different ingredients of this issue to realize what the reality of it is, to understand what the purpose or the purposes of such actions are. And we have to know who those people are, what their intentions are, and what they're seeking by setting a holy book on fire. We have two sides here. On one side, we have the book of God, we have the Quran, and on the other side, we have certain individuals who set this book on fire, desecrating the holy book, and a regime that's giving green light to those people and that's giving them firm protection, tight protection, to be able to do what they want to do freely and without anyone opposing them. We may not be able to know who that individual is who burned the Quran, because the first time we saw it was that day in that video footage. But we know what the Quran is. We've been reading this book for 1400 years now. This book has been around for more than 1,000 years. And other holy books, we've been having them around for thousands of years. Let's see how the Quran introduces itself so that we may realize what this book is, so that we may realize what the teachings of this book is, to understand the enemies of this book and the friends of this book, to understand why is it that this book has upset some people, why is it that this book is hated by some people and some governments to the extent that they desecrate, they set it on fire, and they disrespect the Holy Quran and the followers of the Holy Quran. The Holy Book, the Quran, in the second page, introduces itself as the book of guidance. Quran says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Alif Lam Mim, Dhalika al-Kitab, this is the book. La rayba fih, there is no doubt in it. If you have any question about this book, the answer of that question is within this book, and we will give you the answer. So you won't be left out without answers here. There is no doubt in it. La rayba fi hudan lil muttaqin. This is a book that's a guidance for the God-weary, for those who are pious, for those who are living a good life and who are looking for prosperity and perfection in this life. Okay, this is how this book is introducing itself. Now, because the time is very short, let's take a look at the teachings of this holy book. A large number of the verses of this book is dedicated to the concept of justice. Quran in numerous verses talks about justice and how justice is important and how the purpose of sending down all these prophets and the commandments with them was to uphold justice. Quran is telling us that if we judge between people, we have to be just. Quran is telling us that we need to establish a government, the final and universal government that has a main goal, and that goal is to bring justice for everyone. God says in this book that the Savior will come after the world is filled with injustice, to bring justice for people. So Quran is a book of justice. If you go over the pages of this book, it's always talking about justice. Another part of the teachings of this book is about freedom. Quran says, the Holy Quran says openly and clearly states that you should not accept the authority and power of anyone except Allah, except God the Almighty. Don't be afraid of anyone. Quran is telling people you were born free, you were created free, and you have to live as a free man. You have to live as free men and women and not be scared and afraid of anything and anyone but the power of God. And even when God says the power of God, God says my mercy covers covers everything else. Meaning that I'm not just going to go angry over my creation. Rather, my mercy is over that anger, the anger of God. Therefore, you don't have to be afraid of me thinking that I might do something bad to you. No. My mercy is always around you. I'm ready, and I will always shower you with my mercy. Quran is a book of virtue. Quran is a book of morality. It's interesting. Quran is telling us not to backbite, not to talk bad behind other people. Quran is telling us to be kind to one another. Quran is telling us to respect one another. Quran is telling us don't look at different people based on their colors, based on their gender, based on their nationality. No. People were created as human beings, and they're all equal in front of God and in front of other people, except for those who are more pious than others. So the discrimination that the world is suffering from today, Quran is fighting with that discrimination. Quran is telling us that people are equal. And you should only accept the authority of God and consider God as the person in charge. So this is the book of God. Let me just give you an example. In one of the verses of the Holy Quran, what's the most important concept that you would think that God speaks about? It's a concept of the oneness of God, a tawheed, that all the prophets taught, the followers of the prophets, that believe in the oneness of God, believe in only one God, which is the Almighty God. In one of the verses, God says, worship only one God, Allah, God the Almighty. And then next to that he says, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, and be respectful, be kind towards your parents. So this is the book that we're dealing with. This is the book that we're talking about. The whole book, this book is talking about respecting one another. It's talking about justice. It's talking about human rights. It's talking about freedom. It's talking about how to have a prosperous life, how to have a beautiful life, both in this world and in the hereafter. Now, we have certain individuals who don't like this book. We don't like the teachings of this book. Fine. You don't like it? Through disliking this book, through the hatred of this book that you have, we get to know who you are. You are introducing the real personality of yourself to the people of the world. And also the regime, the government that's supporting those individuals burning and desecrating the Holy Quran. If the government of Sweden is supporting such actions, if the government of Sweden is giving full protection to those individuals, it shows that they're also on the same page. They're also on the same page. They're against the teachings of the Quran.
Yeah.
They're against justice. They're against freedom. They're against human rights. They're against morality. They're
Right.
against all of the good virtues.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much for your comments. One of the questions that we have to ask, the Swedish government claims that they are condemning these such an acts in burning and insulting the beliefs of other religious groups, but at the same time they are saying that they are just letting such an acts to be done because of the freedom of expressions. So how rational is this claim that the Swedish government and some other Western governments are making?
I think politicians over the years have learned to lie in the face of the people while they have a smile on their faces. They've learned to lie beautifully. They say, if they say we don't like such actions and we condemn it, you have to condemn it in action. Why did you give full support and protection to the individual, to the second individual who burnt the Holy Quran after the first incident took place? And why didn't you do anything? You have to bring that person to court, send it to the court, and do something about it. I would like to ask a question. Say, if there was a person in front of the castle of the queen, I don't know, or the king of Sweden, because such countries, by the way, from one side they call for democracy, and at the same time they're being controlled and led under the monarchy of some kings who just took power by force. So if you understand the irony between gaining power by force and democracy, you will understand what's going on here. You would be able to understand what's going on here. Let someone to come in front of that palace and set the Constitution of Sweden on fire and see what happens. Will you arrest that person? You will send him to the court? If someone comes and openly desecrates your holy beliefs, what will you do about it? There are a lot of Muslims living in Sweden, Swedish citizens. At least if you don't respect the people of the world, respect your own citizens. So I think today we all know that these politicians have learned to lie beautifully, and when they condemn it, they just say something on media and they don't do anything about it. If you condemn it, don't let such actions take place. I think such actions will have consequences for those who've done it and for those who've supported it. And Sweden, sooner or later, I'm not threatening anyone. No, I'm informing them of the natural consequences that this action, and these sorts of actions will have for them and for anyone who desecrates the holy book. You either will stop this by yourself, or there will be some people who will make you stop doing what you're doing, and you will pay for disrespecting the belief of millions of people dearly.
Well, thank you. You just mentioned the consequences of such an act. We have seen some protests and protest rallies and gatherings in different countries, for instance, as Iran, Pakistan, and other countries. There are both reactions from the people and at the diplomatic and the level of the governments. What do you think should be the reactions of Islamic countries? Because except the Islamic Republic of Iran and Iraqi governments, we haven't seen a strong and clear reaction from the Islamic countries and states under the OIC and other Islamic communities. What is the real and right reaction of the Islamic countries in your perspective?
I think the governments, well, first of all, as you said, the people of these Islamic countries and Muslims all around the globe, regardless of their sects, they're all angry with what happened. They're all very, very upset with what took place in Sweden, especially since it was the second time within a month or so. So people are angry, and the governments they're also responsible to react. The governments they have this responsibility on their shoulders to pressure the Swedish governments and make them realize that if these sorts of actions happen and take place in Sweden, they have to pay for it. It could be by kicking their ambassador out of this country, out of their countries. It could be by boycotting their products. It could be by putting sanctions, economic sanctions, and other sorts of sanctions on Sweden. We have the Muslim countries. I forgot what the name is. The Union of Muslim Countries. I think they're responsible on imposing sanctions on Sweden and on any country that's disrespecting the beliefs of Muslims, and they're hurting Muslims, and they're hurting any free men and women all around the world. Setting the Holy Quran on fire is not only setting the Quran on fire, it means setting the Holy Bible on fire. It means setting the Holy Torah on fire. It's not only the Holy Quran. They're setting the book of God on fire. It doesn't make any difference whether it's the Quran or the Bible or the Torah or any other holy books that we have. So I think, as well as Muslim brothers and sisters who are upset and who are out on the streets in different countries in the world, we need to be together with our Christian brothers and sisters, and also those Jews who respect the teachings of God, and we need to be together and stand for such acts of discrimination.
Oh yeah, thank you for your comments, Mrs. Taib. If you want to add anything at the end of our discussion, I would be really thankful to add.
There's one point, and that we have to realize that this book is a miracle. Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny, he had a few miracles like other prophets. Like, for example, Prophet Jesus, he could cure the dead or cure the sick. He could revive people and bring them back to life. Prophet Muhammad also had a number of miracles. Moses had a number of miracles. So what we know is that one of the miracles of the Prophet is this book, the Holy Quran. And God says, if you can, bring 10 verses like this book, and you can't. Till the end of the history, no one can change this book. God says you cannot change this book, and no one can write something like this book. All right. When something is a miracle, we have to understand that the enemies of God and the enemies of this book, since they know it's a miracle and they can't fight with the power of God, the only thing and the last option they have is to set this book on fire. Why? Because they don't want people of the people of the world to read this book. Let me give you one example, a historic example here. At the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may God's peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny, when God revealed the Quran, the infidels of Mecca, which was the place the Quran was being revealed to the Prophet, was being sent down to the Prophet, they told their followers to put cotton in their ears, not to hear the voice of the Prophet reciting the Holy Quran. They would say he's a magician, and with these words, he can play with you and work on your mindset and get hold of your thoughts. Obviously, because they knew if anyone hears the words of this Quran, they will start following it. That's why they would tell their followers to put cotton in their ears not to hear the sound of the Quran. This is the same thing that's happening today. They were afraid of the people hearing what's in the Quran. They're still afraid of the people hearing what's in the Quran because they don't want the people to go after the teachings of the Quran, which is again justice, freedom, human rights, morality, and all of those virtues that I mentioned. Yeah. This is why we have this Islamophobia around. This is why they set this book, The Miracle of God, on fire, because they don't have any other way to fight with this book and to get rid of this book. No, this book will be there, and till the end of the history, this holy book will be there. God will protect this book, as he says in this book. He says, we sent down this book, we sent down this book, and we will protect it ourselves, and no one can do anything to this book, since this is the book of guidance.
Thank you so much, Mehdi Taib, the founder of Al-Qaim Seminary based in Qom, for accepting our invitation and sharing your comments with us. The listening viewers, thank you for choosing SNN. Stay with us.